Have you ever noticed those people who seem to attract money without trying? They win a small jackpot, and then another. They receive unexpected help, a timely client, a last-minute check. It looks like luck, or fate, or some quiet contract with the world. It looks effortless. There is a particular way of thinking behind that appearance. A mental architecture that organizes attention, emotion, and decision in a very specific pattern. Many of these people do not even know they operate that way. They think they are simply lucky. They do not see the wiring that makes opportunity visible to them. What I will do here is not hand you another list of feel-good hacks. I will dissect the psychological and energetic structure that sits behind those who naturally manifest abundance. I will be clinical. I will be honest. I will show you the inner choreography that makes coincidence feel like a habit. I will map the pattern. I will expose how their minds interpret events, how their emotions color choices, and how their daily posture produces returns. Most importantly, I will show you one precise first step you can use to begin shifting the frequency you broadcast to the world. Ask yourself plainly, do you feel constantly blocked around money, while others seem to be stumbling into it? That question is the doorway. Step through it, and you will see both the diagnosis and the treatment. But first, we must understand who these people are when they are not on stage, where they hide the secret that the world rewards, where their minds sit when opportunity knocks, and what that reveals about your own patterns. The next section unpacks that general profile, and it will be sharper than you expect. I keep returning to the same image. Someone in a cafe pays for a stranger's coffee. A week later, they get a call with a freelance job. Another time, a person accidentally hears about a sale and buys something that becomes a small business resale hit. Outside, it looks like serendipity. Inside, there is a steady pattern. When I look closely, these people almost never introduce themselves as lucky. They do not say, "Luck follows me." Instead, they speak with a quiet expectation, as if life simply does what should be done. They call it flow, or being in the right place, or trusting the process. That language disguises a deeper structure. The structure sits beneath the words like a foundation beneath a house. In my notes, I describe the foundation in 3 layers. First, a habitual expectation that resources will appear. Not desperation, not fantasy. A pragmatic expectancy that things align if one pays attention. Second, a tolerance for ambiguity. They do not demand certainty before acting. Finally, an economy of attention. They do not waste emotional energy on fear of lack. Small examples reveal the mechanics better than definitions. I watched a woman I know decide, without fanfare, to attend a workshop she could barely afford. She did not overplan how the money would return. She went because the content moved her. 3 months later, she was consulting for a client she met in that room. I saw a man refuse to obsess about debt and instead offered a simple service to neighbors. A year in, the small service turned into a subscription income stream. These choices look reckless to people locked in scarcity. To those who attract, they look like basic hygiene. This group's behavior contains contradictions. They are neither reckless nor cautious in conventional terms. They are deliberately non-attached and yet decisively responsive. When most people freeze to analyze risks, they scan for signals. When others replay worst-case scenarios, they test an imperfect idea and learn. They cultivate a relationship to money that is flexible, not rigid. That flexibility is not a moral posture. It is strategic. Ask yourself how you respond when a small chance appears. Do you search for proof that it is safe? Or do you see it as a data point? That distinction marks the border between someone who keeps sinking into patterns of lack and someone who moves through them. If you felt a small flare of discomfort reading that question, you are already noticing why this matters. There is more to the profile than temperament. There are stories they tell themselves that support that posture. On the surface, their stories are simple. I create value, says one. I follow what I love, says another. I expect the good, offers a third. Those sentences are tidy, but they hide a set of mental habits. Internally, They repeat less glamorous lines. I will take this step and see what happens. If I miss the mark, I will learn. I will not let fear decide for me. The public story comforts the social world. The private script organizes action. Let me be explicit. These people do not ignore money. They pay attention to it. They neither romanticize nor demonize it. They treat it as a signal of exchange, not as the measure of human worth. This is subtle. Most of us grow up coding money as a judgment about character. In the minds I study, money is simply information about where value is currently appreciated. That recalibration changes how they make choices. I can describe the pattern clinically. Their baseline emotional tone is sufficiency. That is not arrogance. It is a quiet acceptance that resources can and will circulate. Their attention habit looks for leverage rather than guarantees. They notice small openings. They act when others hesitate. The result is not an endless river of riches. It is repeated micro-correct alignments with opportunity. Over time, those micro-alignments add up. How they narrate success is also instructive. When something goes well, they say, "That was expected." When something goes poorly, they say, "Okay, that taught me something." Rarely do they catastrophize. Rarely do they inflate success into identity. Their emotional amplitude around money is narrow, controlled. That conserves psychic energy. That energy then goes into noticing, creating, and acting. Energy spent on panic is energy not available for recognition of the next chance. You probably know people like this in your life. A partner who can always find the right handyman. An aunt who keeps getting small inheritances at odd times. A friend who lands freelance gigs with odd timing. They do not talk about being special. They behave differently. Their choices create a pattern that looks like luck to an external observer. Now I want to be clear about something uncomfortable. This pattern can be quiet and invisible because it is also selfish in a precise way. Not selfish in the sense of greed, but selfish in resource allocation. They protect their attention and their time. They refuse to feed every drama. They guard their internal economy. That refusal looks noble to them and petty to others. But it is effective. Here is another uncomfortable truth. The world responds to consistency, not just actions. The internal consistency of expectation. People who attract money send a steady signal. They do not oscillate between frantic grabbing and passive wishing. Their signal is steady. That steadiness organizes the social field. People and systems respond to repetition more than to intensity. A whisper repeated becomes a call. You may be thinking this sounds like theory. Let me give you a concrete scene. Two friends are offered the same small business lead. One immediately says, "I can do it." The other runs an internal drama about pricing, worth, and whether this will ruin my brand. The first one delivers a tight project and gains a referral. The second one loses the lead to fear and later uses the loss as proof that the market is bad. The only real difference was the internal script about worth and action. Do you see how small choices accumulate into character? That accumulation is not mystical. It is patterning. It is habit formation. People who appear to fall into prosperity do so because their habits make opportunity visible and actionable. Their skills are not flashy. They are mundane. Attention discipline, emotional steadiness, readiness to learn. That is the general X-ray. But there are different internal flavors inside that X-ray. The same engine runs in different cars. Before I move on, a brief and honest request. I'm producing these videos out of direct observation and long notes. If you find this analysis useful, subscribing helps me keep doing this work. I am aiming for 1,000 subscribers so these ideas can reach more people. Leave a comment with your city or country so I know where you're listening from. It keeps me honest and connected. The way these people present themselves to others is a performance that hides the mechanism. Publicly, they are modest or generous or spiritual. Privately, they run a simple calculus that favors possibility. That is why the next section matters. I will now break those shades into distinct internal types. You will see how the same engine can drive very different lives. One will feel familiar to you. One may feel like a warning. When you focus on utility, money often appears as an answer to that usefulness. A typical day for a value-focused person is practical and generous. They wake and check what can be improved in their work. They offer a prototyped idea to a client for low cost. They ask for feedback. They iterate. When a friend mentions a need, they propose a small solution that grows into a paid relationship. By evening, they have a list of micro wins and one unexpected commission. Their private story is not about luck. It is about responsibility. If I create value, I will be paid. That belief is their engine. Their core belief is precise. Value precedes compensation. It is not a moral superior claim. It is a practical stance. The consequence is that they often build durable streams. They may not be dramatic winners on day one, but their reputation compounds. The dangerous edge is their tendency to undercharge. Because they center value over return, they can be exploited. If you see yourself here, the corrective is brutal and practical. Learn to price. Treat compensation as part of the value equation. That small adjustment preserves what they do best and stops the slow bleed of being useful but poor. Next, there are the detached. They treat money as weather. It comes and goes. They refuse to be defined by their balance sheet. They do the work they love without obsessing about the scoreboard. Their decisions are emotional clarity. Do I want to spend my time on this? If yes, they do it. If no, they step away. That posture creates strange advantages. A day for the detached often looks like a slow drift toward opportunity. They do not chase. They follow curiosity. They might pick up a part-time gig because it interests them and then convert that interest into a niche business. They rarely panic at a dip. Their inner phrase is simple: I will manage. The power in this type is that lack does not hijack their cognition. They can notice opportunities that happen while others are busy fretting. But the detached can also slip into negligence. They can use detachment as an excuse for refusal to plan. They may also be blind to incremental steps that would improve their situation. If you are this type, the challenge is discipline without losing the core calm. Create small routines that honor your freedom but add guardrails. Small rules save big energy. Third, the experimenters. I love watching these people because they treat life like a lab. They fail quickly and treat each failure as data. Their mornings are full of micro-experiments. They test a price. They try a pitch. They swap a product feature. Their belief is that abundance follows iteration. They are comfortable with uncertainty because uncertainty is evidence to them. A typical experimenter day is messy. They launch 3 small tests and measure response. One fails, one yields a lead, one reveals an insight. They pivot. The experimenter's strength is resilience. They do not personalize failure. The danger is they can become scattered. Too many tests, too little follow-through. If you are this type, your growth edge is to convert learning into persistent channels. Experiment with a funnel mindset. Test fast, then scale what works. Finally, the positive expectors. These people genuinely expect good things. Not as a forced smile, but as a lived hypothesis. They wake with a small certainty that life will cooperate. Their internal language is affirmative and calm. Something good will come today, they say, and then they notice when it does. The effect is not magical thinking. It is a sustained orientation that filters reality differently. A day for a positive expector often includes quiet rituals. They notice small wins. They say thank you. They share credit. They do not shout about success. Instead, they accumulate recognition. Their belief is that expectation is a signal the world hears. The risk is complacency disguised as faith. If you expect good things but never prepare to receive them, your expectation becomes fantasy. The correction is practical. Hold expectation and also prepare operationally. Expectation plus competence is the combination that moves mountains. Across these 4 types, a few threads tie them together. They all avoid the tyranny of panic. They all keep attention on what can be done rather than on catastrophes. Yet they differ in how they translate that attention into behavior. Some are builders, some are testers, some are calm sailors, and some are relentless value machines. You can be more than one. Many people migrate between types depending on stress, money cycles, and life stage. Let me give you 2 short lives I have watched to make this real. The first is Anna, a value-focused woman who spent 5 years offering pro bono workshops to small businesses. She never shouted about the free work. She simply delivered. Slowly, a pattern emerged. A client paid for a small pilot. The pilot led to a referral. A year later, Anna had steady contracts and a small team. The pivot was not obvious to her at first. She thought she was just doing the right thing. Her reframe came when she realized the free work had been an investment, not a loss. She started charging with clarity. Her life changed. The second is Marcos, an experimenter who treated a side hobby like a series of prototypes. He launched 3 different product ideas in 18 months. 2 failed. The third gained traction because he kept iterating the delivery and price. His income stayed unstable for a while, but his psychology allowed him to persist. When he finally scaled, he had a resilient model because it was built on years of real testing rather than a single lucky bet. Both stories converge on a truth. Small, consistent behaviors produce cumulative effects. That is the heartbeat behind the lottery myth. The people who look lucky have been practicing certain moves for years. If you recognized yourself in any of these portraits, do not soften the recognition. That recognition is the beginning of responsibility. The map tells you where your blind spots are. The value-focused must price. The detached must add discipline. The experimenter must focus. The positive expector must combine faith with craft. These are practical, non-romantic interventions. There is one final point before the next step. These internal types are not moral categories. None is superior. Each has strengths and predictable fractures. The universe does not favor one type by decree. It reflects back the consistency of the interior stance. The pattern is coherent. If you are inconsistent inside, the world will be inconsistent back. If you want a different return, you must provide a different signal. In the next section, I will show you the invisible law that explains why these types receive the outcomes they do. I will name the mechanism and show how the mind, emotion, and action combine to make the world respond. Understanding that law is not optional if you want to stop blaming luck. It is the clinical truth that explains both reward and punishment. Are you ready to see the rule behind the seeming miracle? I call the mechanism the law of dominant vibrational frequency. It sounds like jargon. It is not. It is a practical map of how mind, habit, and circumstance conspire to produce outcomes. I will show you the circuit. I will name its parts so you can see the wiring in your own life. At its simplest, the law says this: whatever mental emotional pattern you run most often becomes the signal you send to the world. The world, people, systems, opportunities match that signal. If your default is scarcity, you will chronically tune into evidence of lack. If your baseline is sufficiency, you will tune into openings. That is the law in a sentence. Now let me break the sentence into anatomy. First node, baseline narrative. This is the story that plays when nothing urgent is happening. For some people it is, I manage, things work out. For others it is, nothing ever goes right for me. Baseline narrative is quiet. It is not a slogan you shout. It lives in tone, in expectation. Tone matters more than content. A hopeful person can say a worried sentence and still sound open. A fearful person can repeat a positive mantra and sound hollow. Which voice do you habitually listen to? Second node, habitual emotion. This is the low-grade feeling that colors perception. Not the spike of panic when a bill arrives. The slow river under the surface. Anxiety is different from vigilance. Resignation is different from acceptance. That background feeling shapes what you notice. When the river runs scarcity, opportunities appear as threats or unrealizable fantasies. Third node, attention economy. This is the practice of choosing what you look at. People with a dominant frequency of abundance have trained their attention to notice small signals, and if she expects scarcity, she will interpret the event as random or unsafe and forget about it. Same event, different frequency, different life. Now, the important corrective. When I say universe here, I do not mean magic. I mean systemic reciprocity. People exchange favors. Markets reward certain behaviors. Attention organizes networks. The word universe is shorthand for the set of responses you reliably trigger. Calling it cosmic is poetic. Calling it behavioral is useful. This is not moralizing. The law is amoral. It simply describes coherence between what you emit internally and what you receive externally. If you are confusing lack with virtue, the law will not discriminate. It will give you more of the pattern you radiate. If your deep signal is self-denial, the system will return scarcity, because scarcity is the faithful echo of that signal. There are predictable failure modes inside this law. One is the performative posture. People will adopt the language of abundance, saying they trust the process, while their baseline remains scarcity. Words without tone are noise. The world reads tone. Another failure is the oscillation between extremes. Flashes of confidence followed by deep withdrawals confuse the system. The law prefers consistency. A whisper repeated is louder than a shout. Understanding the pathway helps you intervene. The legalistic map gives you target points. You can change your baseline narrative by retelling specific memory episodes to yourself differently. You can change habitual emotion by small, repeated practices that alter physiology. You can change attention by rules that force you to scan for signals rather than threats. You can change action by adopting micro-habits that bias toward testing over analysis paralysis. Let me make this concrete with a short scene. You receive an email offering a small freelance job that could lead to more. Scarcity mind says, I need to check references, market rates, legal protections. You open a spreadsheet. Days pass. The job is gone. The follow-up email apologizes. We found someone who could start tomorrow. Abundance mind says, I can do this in a minimal version and ask for feedback. 2 hours later, deliverable sent, referral received. The difference is small. The cost in psychic energy is large. Which route do you default to? Now, where this law becomes dangerous is in its invisibility. People believe results are random. They call outcomes luck or fate. That belief protects them from responsibility. If you think the world is capricious, you do not have to audit your signal. If you believe in the law, you must take ownership of the tone you emit. Ownership is not blame. It is power. There are limits to what changing your frequency achieves. You cannot control macro shocks, structural injustice, or the cruelty of specific people. The law does not promise that you will never experience hardship. What it promises is coherence. If you change your dominant frequency, you change the probability distribution of outcomes. The tail events, good and bad, still occur, but your day-to-day returns will shift. Understanding the law is one thing. Breaking the habitual circuit is another. The next part will show the law in motion. It will not be abstract. I will trace the exact cycle I see in people who call themselves unlucky, and show how the law accelerates the pattern through a closed loop. If you have ever felt betrayed by life, watch how your own behavior is quietly building the scene. I'll show you the cycle next, and you will recognize it because you have probably run it yourself without noticing. The cycle runs like this. Attention narrows to lack, which breeds an emotional tone of fear, which produces avoidance or frantic action, which yields mediocre results, which then confirms the original belief. It is a simple mechanical loop. It is also exquisitely cruel because it feeds on itself and disguises the feeding as evidence. Let's take a first context, opportunities. You get a lead. Scarcity mind's first reflex is inventory. Do I have time? Will it pay? What if I fail? Each question is legitimate. The difference is proportion. If the tone behind the questions is panic, checking becomes a ritual of avoidance. The lead cools. Someone else takes it. The person who missed it uses the loss as proof that the market is unfair. The narrative is complete: event, reaction, justification. The story props up the belief. Second context: products and ideas. You find an undervalued item or a simple service you could offer. Scarcity mind calculates reasons it won't sell. Abundance mind tests price, copies the listing, makes a small ad. The test gives a signal. Scarcity mind reads that signal through a skeptical lens. It's sold because you lucked into the right night. The opportunity dissolves. The person who acted improves. The person who doubted learns to be right about no market because they never test it. Third context: learning and skill. A class appears that could change your offer. Scarcity mind says, "It will take too long. I cannot afford the downtime." So you delay. Months later, you find the skill elsewhere, more expensive, or you have watched others apply it and gain. The initial hesitation becomes proof that timing was wrong. The timing only ever looked wrong because your pattern selected evidence that fit it. These are not isolated examples. They compound. The small losses accumulate like micro-debts. One missed lead turns into a 6-month income gap because the person never built a pipeline. One missed test becomes a blind spot and then a reputation gap. Over time, the pattern defines a life. You are not unlucky. You are consistent. I will give you a clearer picture by following a person I will call Mara. She is skilled and generous. She tells herself she trusts the universe. She also sleeps with a running tab of worry about bills. When a possible client calls, Mara's tone is tight. She dithers on price. She offers a discount rather than a package. She sabotages her margin to secure the deal emotionally. The client senses insecurity and asks for more concessions. Mara's day ends with exhaustion and less money than she expected. She blames external conditions and vows to be more visible. Next month, the same pattern repeats. The loop has become ritual. Another portrait, Elias. He loves to experiment. He launches ideas, but he has no filter. Dozens of half-baked products, no focus. He treats failure as data. That is useful until the data never get consolidated. He learns fast and loses slowly. His income swings. He confuses motion with progress. The cycle then becomes a long season of instability. People call him resilient. He calls himself unlucky when a major opportunity needs a steady platform he never built. What binds Mara and Elias is not their differences. It is the same internal engine, a low-grade signal that sets attention, determines action thresholds, and reads results in a biased way. The cycle rewards confirmation. Your mind is a master at proof selection. You will notice what fits your script and make it mean permanence. There is a social angle to the loop too. People around you respond to your rhythm. If you are chronically indecisive, collaborators stop offering firm leads because they assume you will ghost. If you are perennially underpricing, you attract clients who commodify you. The world adapts to your default. It optimizes against your weak spots. You start to complain about a bad market, while the market has simply adjusted to the pattern you betray. Here are 3 mechanisms that lock the cycle further. First, story enforcement. Humans are storytellers. We take events and build coherent narratives. That coherence feels like truth. The narrative seals the loop by converting isolated events into a pattern. The only way out is to break the story with a counterexample you deliberately manufacture. Second, emotional reinforcement. Anxiety rewires attention to bias negativity. The brain is efficient. It reduces the cost of scanning by foregrounding familiar danger signals. You become better at expecting the old outcome. Expectation sculpts perception. Third, identity fusion. Once a pattern gets attached to identity, I'm the unlucky one. I can't scale. The loop becomes moralized. Now resistance meets not only habit, but self-image. People defend their misfortune because it explains them. Changing would mean becoming someone else. This is why interventions that only target behavior rarely stick. Telling someone to act more will fail if the emotional and identity layers are intact. You cannot bolt new actions onto the same old engine and expect a different direction. The loop will reabsorb the behavior, but understand this. Interruption is fragile. The loop fights back. After a single successful interruption, you will be tempted to explain it away. That was luck. Do not let yourself off the hook. Collect the disconfirming evidence and treat it like currency. Record it. Make it real. The loop loses power in arithmetic. If you do not intervene, the cycle escalates. What started as a handful of missed chances becomes a narrowing of networks, a corrosion of trust, and a hardened identity. The world then mirrors that narrowing, and the experience feels fated. It is not fate. It is pattern. Now ask yourself, where does your version of the loop live? In what moments do you default to defense instead of experiment? What story do you tell about missed chances? If you are uneasy at that question, good. That unease is the first tiny friction that can arrest the spin. In the next section, I will show what happens when this accumulation becomes unsustainable. I will describe the point of rupture and what it feels like to hit that bottom. I will also contrast two possible trajectories from that moment: collapse or awakening. Which will you choose when the pattern finally forces a crisis? We are about to see that cliff clearly and painfully. The accumulation feels small until it is not. Months of avoiding a price increase. Years of saying, next month, to a new offer. Paychecks that stop matching bills. The pressure builds like water behind a dam. At some moment the dam leaks, then breaks. The break is not theatrical. It is ordinary. It is a call from a creditor, an eviction notice, a relationship that ends because money talk never happened. Or it is the slow death of a professional reputation that can no longer be revived with apologies. I have watched two versions of the break 100 times. One is collapse. The person externalizes blame and doubles down on the old script. They feel justified. They grow resentful. The other path is awakening. The person finally accepts that their inner routine has been the architect of their plight. The acceptance is brutal. It is also clarifying. Both routes begin at the same place: undeniable evidence. Consider Lena. She had been waiting for the right time to monetize her coaching. When the right time never naturally arrived, she convinced herself that being authentic meant refusing pricing. One day she missed rent. The crisis woke an honesty she had avoided for years. Lena stopped romanticizing the timeline and started asking practical questions. The first 2 months were ugly. She corrected pricing, lost friends, gained paying clients, and built buffer. Her life did not flip on a dime, but the pattern of recurring scarcity started to loosen. Now consider Raul. He hit a similar low. He had repeatedly turned down partnerships out of pride. When an urgent bill demanded money, he accepted a demeaning gig. He told himself the world was unfair. He stayed in that mind because it protected his ego from admitting error. Months later, the pattern had hardened and the same kind of compromise repeated. Raul's story is a caution. You can survive the initial collapse only to fossilize the pattern if you refuse introspection. The internal experience of the break is rich and often paradoxical. There is shame. There is grief for lost time. There is anger at oneself and at external systems. There is an odd, sharp relief because the pattern no longer hides behind plausible deniability. You might feel exposed. That exposure is the doorway. The moment of clarity contains a simple truth. You were not helpless. You were habitual. This is where responsibility enters, not as moral punishment, but as leverage. Responsibility is the thing you can do now. You cannot rewind missed years. You can change the next steps. Responsibility asks for 3 things: a factual audit, small corrective behavior, and a new story you can live with. The factual audit is inventory without drama. What are your real numbers? What did your choices produce in the last 6 months? Where did a different action create a different outcome? The goal is not shame. The goal is data. People resist audit because the truth feels heavy. Do it. Truth is actionable. Small corrective behavior is about micro-discipline. It is not a vow to become ultra-responsible overnight. It is one tiny rule that changes the signal. For someone who dithers on price, the rule might be, I respond with a minimally viable offer within 48 hours and set a non-negotiable floor. For someone who overloads experiments, the rule could be, I run 3 tests, pick one to scale, archive the rest. The rules are simple, binary. They reorient action and create new feedback. The new story is perhaps the hardest. You must narrate yourself into a different identity. That identity cannot be airy. It must be believable. You cannot say, I am abundant now, and then continue to act from old fear. The story must be anchored in small wins. I am a person who prices clearly is better than I am rich. Identity changes when you rehearse new scenes enough that your internal script updates. Importantly, the break can be chosen earlier. People sometimes wait for theater to force them. That is inefficient. You can manufacture pressure strategically. You can set deadlines and stakes that force disruption before catastrophe. This is the surgical option. Create a controlled crisis so the pattern cracks without total ruin. There is a spiritual dimension to the breakpoint that people often miss. Crisis functions as a mirror. It amplifies the truth you habitually avoid. Spirituality without discipline becomes escapism. Discipline without inner reorientation becomes a treadmill. The break, when used wisely, fuses the two. It demands both practical changes and inner recalibration. What sustains people after the break is not optimism. It is small evidence compounded. A single price sale that did not implode their character. A client who stayed when offered fair terms. A test that yielded a repeatable result. These are the bones of a new frequency. They are not dramatic. They are patient. They build until habit tilts. I want to be stern here. The break can also be politically unfair. Structural disadvantage is real. The law I describe interacts with systems that are not neutral. My insistence on responsibility is not a denial of systemic pain. It is a pragmatic position. Within your context, you still have agency in certain nodes. You can improve odds. You can produce more coherent signals. You can protect attention. That is not blaming the poor. It is identifying the levers that exist even in bad systems. A real turning point I witnessed was in a man named Samir. He had been in debt for years. He blamed bad luck and toxic employers. When a hospital bill pushed him to desperation, he did something small. He listed his skills and offered a single, cheap package to neighbors. He sold 5 in 2 weeks. The income was tiny but regular. The pattern of waiting for luck was interrupted. He scaled methodically. 2 years later, he had a stable client base and a different baseline feeling about money. His life changed because he stopped waiting and started making small, consistent offers. Contrast that with Layla. She had a similar moment, but used it to confirm anger. She roared for a year against the system, found a tribe that validated her, and kept repeating the patterns that had created the desperation. Her story is common. Moral outrage without tactical change is a stall. Which of these endings will be yours? The break forces a decision whether to continue hiding behind the story or to become the person who can sustain a new frequency. That decision is not a single heroic act. It is the slow collapse of old defenses and the patient practice of new moves. If you are nearing your own break, or if you have already felt its first sparks, the path forward exists and it is practical. In the next part 1 will lay out the reprogramming steps that actually work. I will give you a concrete mini ritual you can begin tonight that targets the nodes of the law, narrative, emotion, attention, action. It is short. It is demanding. It is the place where awareness becomes change. If you are ready to stop blaming luck, the first exercise waits in the next section. I have watched the moment people decide they will no longer be guided by fear. It is small. It is private. It often begins in the hour before sleep. That hour is a hinge. If you use it, the hinge opens. If you waste it, the pattern keeps turning. I learned to value that hour because it is where the inner posture can be rewritten, line by line. I will be blunt. Most interventions fail because they target behavior and ignore tone. You can force a spreadsheet, set autopay, take a course, and still keep the old engine running. The engine is the habitual freak. Skip one and the old loop smiles and keeps going. Nightly inventory. For 21 consecutive nights, before you sleep, write 3 lists on a single page. List A. 3 concrete examples of abundance you experienced today. They do not need to be financial. They can be a clear idea, a kind message, a meal, time with someone, or a solved problem. Be specific. Name the person, the moment, the hour. List B. 3 opportunities you noticed today, even if you did nothing. Describe the opportunity as if you were an outside observer. Who mentioned it? Where did it appear? List C. 1 honest sentence you will say to yourself out loud before sleep that accepts responsibility and sets a new identity claim. My sentence is, I am a reliable channel for steady prosperity. I test, I learn, I price fairly, and I respond clearly. That sentence is short. It is not magical. It is a rehearsal of identity. The power here is arithmetic. The brain loves patterns. If you record 3 daily instances of abundance, you flood your memory with counter-evidence to scarcity. You do not argue with your fear. You build evidence. The emotional tone softens because you can now point to facts. Facts change the background hum. That small change alters the next morning's attention. Do this for 21 days, and you will have 63 moments recorded. 63 is not mystical. It is a statistical argument your anxious mind cannot dismiss as one-off luck. But the nightly ritual alone is fragile. Old scripts push back. So pair the inventory with a midday calibration. At a fixed time noon or 3 p.m. stop for 5 minutes. Read your page from last night. Ask 2 questions out loud. What small, testable action can I run on this opportunity in the next 48 hours? And what is my non-negotiable floor on this issue? The answers must be specific and binary. The test should be measurable. The floor should be clear and unarguable. For example, post the minimal offer by Friday, or I will not accept below $X. Say them. Write them. Then do 1 micro action within the hour. This ties intention to behavior. The third piece is the non-negotiable action floor. This is a simple rule set that prevents your old pattern from reabsorbing wins. For people who underprice, the rule might be, I will send a first quote that is at least 30% above my current average and hold that price for 48 hours. For people who over-experiment, the rule might be, I will run 3 tests, pick 1 to scale, archive the rest for 90 days. 4 chronic delayers. If an opportunity hits my inbox, I respond within 24 hours with a minimally viable proposal. Pick 2 binary rules only. Keep them simple. The rules are surgical. They create constraints that force new choices. Constraints are the skeleton the mind needs to grow a new habit. I insist on the word binary. Vague commitments die. Conditional ones get argued away. Non-negotiable rules reduce the friction of choice. They also produce predictable feedback. You will know immediately if you are obeying them. That immediate feedback is crucial because the old loop thrives on ambiguous outcomes that your story can twist into proof of scarcity. You will resist. Expect it. Resistance looks like explanations. I am too busy. This won't work now. Or, I need more confidence before I can charge that. Name the resistance and put it back in the drawer. I taught people to script a 1-line reply to resistance. Thank you, fear. I will act anyway. It sounds small. It is not. It separates feeling from action. It allows the new pattern to get the first word. Let me give you concrete variations because one-size rituals are lies. If your main issue is pricing, your nightly inventory should emphasize examples where fair pricing did not ruin relationships. Document the client who stayed when you raised your fee. Note the conversation that respected your boundary. Your midday calibration asks, what fee will I propose to 2 prospects this week? Your floor rule, no project under $X. Repeat until it becomes muscle. If your problem is follow through, The inventory highlights your small completions, emails finished, invoices sent, tasks marked done. Midday calibration asks, what micro deadline will force completion today? Floor rule. I do not start a new project until I close one pending deliverable. I teach people to track outcomes starkly. Use 3 columns. Action, result, lesson. Be merciless. If you say you will respond to leads within 24 hours and you did not, write why. If the result was better than expected, write exactly what changed. This record is currency. It becomes the new grammar of your identity. Over time, you will notice a structural effect. Your story will change because the arithmetic changes. You will no longer need to wild claim, I am abundant, because the page makes the point for you. There is a danger I must warn you about. After 1 or 2 successes, the mind says, that was luck. It will downplay evidence. Do not let it. I instruct people to escalate the record keeping. When you get a disconfirming win, say, a client who accepted your price market as a tier 1 event. Write an expanded note. Call one trusted person and narrate it out loud. Make the success social. The loop hates external witnesses because social proof is harder to dismiss. The ritual is not solitaire. It invites accountability. Now, the ritual touches identity, but identity must be rehearsed in new scenes. So create micro scenes. A micro scene is a tiny performance of the identity you want. If the new identity is, I am someone who prices clearly, rehearse 5 lines you will say in pricing conversations. Practice them aloud before bed. Rehearse the opening sentence you will use when a lead asks for a discount. Make it short and calm. My price reflects the value and the scope. I can offer X alternatives, not a lower price. Practice the tone until your body recognizes it. Identity is muscle memory as much as thought. The 21-day window matters for neurological reasons. 31 days sounds better in marketing. 21 is long enough to build repetition and short enough to be credible. You will likely carry the practice beyond day 21 if it is useful, but commit to 21 nights. That commitment is a test of seriousness. It distinguishes those who want a life change from those who want a concept. I will not romanticize this. It is work. The first week will be the hardest. The mind will behave like a toddler throwing a tantrum when its story is challenged. It will conjure examples to defend itself. You must be firm. Do the practice anyway. In weeks 2 and 3, you will notice 2 effects. First, your attention shifts. Opportunities that previously slid by will appear differently. Second, your emotional baseline eases. You will have a soft faucet of confidence that leaks into interactions. The rules will begin to deliver different feedback. That is when the engine starts to turn in a new gear. There is also an ethical dimension to this reprogramming. The new pattern must be accountable. Allowing abundance is not a license to exploit. The purpose of clearer prices, timely responses, and disciplined experiments is to create trust and sustainability. You are not learning how to win at someone else's expense. You are learning how to be reliable, visible, and valuable. The universe responds to coherence. The market prefers clarity. People reciprocate to integrity. This is not metaphysical fluff. It is practical. When you present clear offers and stand by your terms, you reduce friction. That reduction often translates into faster conversions and steadier income. Finally, plan for sabotage. You will face 3 predictable threats. The rationalizer, who will invent reasons to delay. The perfectionist, who will argue that offers must be flawless before release. And the moralizer, who will insist that charging is morally suspicious. Prepare a short rebuttal phrase for each. Rationalizer. Action beats more analysis. Perfectionist. Ship the minimal viable version and iterate. Moralizer. Charging for value enables me to serve more people sustainably. Keep these phrases on your page. Use them when the old scripts whisper. If you adopt the ritual and the rules, a curious thing happens. You create a dossier of counter-evidence strong enough to shift your baseline expectation. That shift alters what the universe mirrors back. The pattern that once produced scarcity begins to produce openings. Not miracles, not unchecked windfalls, but steadier signals, clearer choices, and the slow accumulation. You have been running the loop for years. The nightly inventory is new. You get your first small disconfirming event, a paid client who responded to a clear price. You feel surprised, then defensive. That was luck. The practice asks you to mark it anyway, to call a friend, and to make it a Tier 1 entry. This is the hinge that opens Stage 2. Stage 2, consolidation. After 5 to 8 such entries, your nervous system begins to update expectations. You wake up less anxious. You make decisions faster. The midday calibrations become easier because the questions produce answers rather than avoidance. Your calendar starts to fill with testable actions. The non-negotiable floor protects you from bad bargains. You say no with less guilt. You say yes with clearer margins. This is slow consolidation, invisible to anyone but you. But it matters more than a single big win. Stage 3, better traction. With more consistent micro-actions, you accumulate social proof. A former client refers someone. A partner proposes a collaboration because you were reliable. Small money starts flowing predictably. This is when you feel less like you are scraping for luck and more like you are managing a system. You still take risks, but they are informed. You are no longer moving from scarcity. You are moving from experiment. Let me make this concrete with 2 stories you have seen earlier in different forms. Samir, who had been in debt, used a neighbor's sale package to find his footing. He did the nightly inventory, then committed to the action floor. 3 local offers in 2 weeks. He priced at market, not lower. He sold 5 packages and kept the price. The income was small, but it bought breathing room. He used breathing room to run a repeatable micro offer. 2 years later, the baseline had shifted. He had a small enterprise. He did not become rich overnight. He changed the story he told himself about what consistent income looked like. Lena took a different route. She had moral resistance to pricing. Her nightly inventory focused on moments when clients expressed gratitude. Her midday calibration forced her to ask for a fee in one discovery call. She did. She felt shame in the moment, then relief. Recording the moment made it less monstrous. 3 months later, she had recalibrated the way she framed value. Her client roster became smaller, but more lucrative. She lost some friendships that expected freebies. She gained paying clients who respected the clarity. That loss was part of the cost of integrity. Both stories show a consistent pattern. Small, repeated acts produce a new baseline. Notably, the new baseline is more resilient to noise. When an external shock arrives, a late payment, a failed test, you do not interpret it as proof of everlasting scarcity. You interpret it as data. That difference in interpretation is the law at work. Expect setbacks. The universe does not conspire to reward good intentions instantly. It gives tests. The old loop will manufacture reasons to doubt. A sudden bill might arrive. A partner might ghost. Those are the exact moments when your new rituals matter most. Do the nightly inventory even then. Record the small wins you can still find. Run the midday calibration and ask, what micro-action will stabilize this week? Take the action. The ability to act in small, corrective ways is what differentiates those who recover and those who re-fossilize their old story. There is a practical arithmetic behind the shift. Previously, you were operating with a narrow band of evidence, mostly losses and near misses. The inventory multiplies the number of disconfirming data points. The brain integrates frequency. If you show it 63 disconfirming events in 3 weeks, it recalculates probability. That recalculation changes attention. Attention changes action. Action changes outcome. It is not mystical. It is statistical. Let me be explicit about what will change in your day-to-day experience. Decision time shrinks. You spend less energy rumination. You sleep slightly better. You stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios as if they were scripts. Your language changes. You say, I will test, instead of I hope. You price in advance instead of apologizing later. You notice more leads because you are looking for them. And the world responds because clarity is legible. There is also another layer that people underestimate: social optimization. The world adapts to your rhythm. If you are chronically late, people stop depending on you. If you respond quickly and price clearly, reliable clients and collaborators find it easier to work with you. Reliability becomes a magnet. That is a non-woo way to describe what others call alignment. The metaphor fails unless it connects to behavior. Here it does. The future alternative also requires moral clarity. You will be tempted to become transactional in a cynical way. Guard against that. The new pattern must be anchored in contribution. The people who attract lasting prosperity typically create value measured by clear outcomes for others. They are not hustlers. They are people who offer something that actually helps. So as you practice, keep asking, is this product useful? Does this service change a result for someone? If the answer is yes, your pricing becomes defensible. If not, you iterate until it is. Another important truth: the shift is not linear. Expect jagged rhythms. You will have weeks that feel like progress and weeks that feel flat. That is normal. The key is accumulated evidence, not daily mood. Compounding works when you persist through the slow months. Let me offer practical micro-habits you can adopt now that will make the future alternative more likely. First, create a minimal offer that can be delivered in 2 weeks. Price it fairly. Publish it. Second, block 1 hour each week for pipeline practice, 1 hour to reach out to prospects, to follow up, to post a small experiment. Third, make a simple ledger. At the end of each day, record one specific thing you did that moved the business forward. Keep the ledger visible. These micro habits are low friction but high leverage. Also prepare a rollback plan for when fear reasserts itself. A rollback plan is a short list. Read your Tier 1 wins, call your accountability person, and reapply your action floor rule. When you feel the old script, use the plan. It interrupts the drift. You will notice that the people who truly change are not merely disciplined. They are honest. They stop lying to themselves about why they did not act. The nightly inventory forces honesty because it asks for detail. Detail is merciless to excuses. If you write the time, the name, the phrase, the evasions become harder to sustain. Finally, I want to emphasize durability. A new frequency will not shield you from systemic injustice or bad luck. Structural constraints are real, but within any context, changing your default frequency improves the options available to you. It does not guarantee fortune. It guarantees better signal to noise in your life. It gives you more agency where agency exists. In the next section, I will bring this to a close by giving you a mirror and a small, immediate experiment you can run tonight. I will ask direct questions. I will make you choose a micro step you must carry out in the next 48 hours. Because at this point, thinking about change is cheap. Action is the test. If you want that alternate future, you must move toward it now. We are at the place where honesty meets choice. I will not coddle you. I will not hand you a fluffy mantra and walk away. This is a ledger moment. You have seen the machinery, the loop that produces scarcity, the law that translates frequency into experience, the 21-day ritual that rewires expectation. Now you must answer a few direct questions. First, where do you live in the cycle right now? Are you in the pedaling of anxiety, in the grooves of indecision, or at the first sparks of interruption? Be precise. Name the most recent example of the loop in your life. It might be a missed lead, a discounted sale, or an avoided conversation about money. Write it down in one sentence. This is the place to start because seeing is disarming. Second, what will you do differently in the next 48 hours? Not a plan with 10 clauses. One action only. If you underprice, your action is send firm quotes at the new floor to 3 prospects. If you avoid experiments, your action is archive 2 projects and run 1 focus test. If you delay, your action is Respond to the oldest lead in my inbox within 24 hours with a minimally viable offer. Commit aloud to someone. The social witness keeps your word credible. Third, what are you willing to record publicly as evidence? The inventory of abundance is private, but add one record everything in 3 columns. Action, result, lesson. That simple discipline builds evidence. Evidence changes identity. Now consider this warning. If you do none of it, nothing new happens. The world will not conspire to wake you gently. Patterns are robust. Without intervention, they calcify. If your complaint has been, "I lack opportunity," remember, opportunity is correlated with angle of approach. Change your angle, and you change what you see. There is also a moral paradox. Some people use the story of scarcity as righteousness. I suffer, therefore I am ethical. That posture is seductive because it converts material failure into moral virtue. Reject that conversion. Moral truth is not measured by financial discomfort. Moral truth is measured by the coherence between your values and your behavior. If you believe in service, serve in ways that people will pay for. If you believe in justice, create sustainable resources that allow you to act from abundance. Do not idolize suffering. You will ask, will this make me wealthy? I refuse to lie. This method does not guarantee wealth. It guarantees a plausibility shift. It reduces wasted motion. It increases clarity. Wealth, if it comes, is typically the result of consistent value creation plus clearer choices. This practice makes the latter more likely. Think of it as improving your batting average. You will get more hits. You may not hit home runs every week, but you will stop blaming the stadium for your swing. 3 practical tips before I close. Tip 1. Automate the bookkeeping. Use a simple note app with a dated page. Tip 2. Pick one accountability partner for 6 weeks. Meet once a week for 10 minutes. Report the ledger. Tip 3. Choose one thing to defend absolutely for 90 days: your price, your test, your discipline, and refuse to trade it for short-term relief. That defense is the rebar of the new structure. If you have followed me to this point, you are not a spectator. You are a potential author of your life. You have evidence. You have a practice. The rest is repetition and honesty. Do the nightly inventory. Do the midday calibration. Apply the non-negotiable floors. Track results. When doubt returns, read your Tier 1 wins and repeat your identity sentence. Small, consistent work compounds faster than spasms of inspiration. I want to end on a stern and useful note. Responsibility here is not blame. It is leverage. You cannot retroactively fix lost years, but you can change the next months. You can choose how to let the past teach you instead of define you. The practice I gave is not mystical. It is a disciplined conversation with reality. It forces you to notice what you have been ignoring. It forces you to act in ways that produce clear feedback. That is how patterns break. One last exercise. Before you close this video, ask yourself, if I keep doing what I do now, where will I be in a year? Let the answer land without defense. Now ask, if I do the inventory and the rules for 21 days, where might I be in a year? Let that possibility sit next to the first answer. Choose. Then take one small action toward the second scenario within the next 48 hours. That tiny act is the hinge. Thank you for staying with this. If you are still listening, you have already proved you can face an uncomfortable mirror. Post something city or country and the one small action you will take today. Accountability changes outcomes. If you take nothing else from this, take that. Do one honest action. Do it now.